I begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. After having talked about the 4 questions relevant to the life hereafter that have been addressed in the Quran, now I move on to some other questions regarding the life hereafter, which, even though have not been directly mentioned in the Quran, yet there is a mention of their answers here and there. But the questions are important. These questions have arisen because of faulty understanding of many Muslims regarding the concepts of the life hereafter. I'll mention 6 questions that come to one's mind, which, unless they are properly answered and responded to, the concept of life hereafter, the justice of the Almighty as it's going to unfold itself in the next life, cannot be properly and convincingly conveyed. What are those 6 questions? The first question is it true that, as many Muslims believe, that all non-Muslims are going to be doomed in the life hereafter? The second question is, are all Muslims going to succeed in the next life, as many Muslims believe? The third question is, when it is God who guides humans towards the right path, as the Quran says, and it is He who misguides many people, what is the fault of those who are misguided, and what is the great performance on the part of those who are guided? Why should the guided be rewarded? Why should the misguided be punished when it is God who decides about these questions? The next question is that why is it that the description of the life hereafter, whether it be a description of the paradise or a description of the hell, why does it not appeal to all humans alike? Then, another question that many people raise, and apparently, legitimately, convincingly, is why is the punishment of the life hereafter so long, whereas the worldly life is so brief? It is said that the life hereafter is going to be very, very long. Well, in many cases, it is said that it's going to be eternal and would never end. So why should a punishment for a crime that was done for a few years be spread over a very, very long time? And the last question, which is quite often raised, is why is it that God allowed Satan to misguide us, to allure us towards the wrong path, when, if he would not have been there, our performance might have been much better and our possibility of succeeding in the next life would have been much better? Let me take the first question first in this particular presentation, and I'll deal with the rest of these questions in the subsequent presentations. The first question, probably the most significant question regarding the life hereafter, is when we listen to hear what Muslims have got to say about it, is that they believe, they claim that all non-Muslims are going to be doomed in the life hereafter. No matter how well they perform morally, how good humans they may be, but after death, they are going to be unsuccessful, they will be punished, they will be roasted in the hellfire forever. Why? When we read the Quran, we find that the reason why many Muslims who have been led to this understanding is that the Quran mentions the punishment for a kafir to be eternal burning or tormenting in the hell. For instance, in verse 6 of chapter Surah 98, the Almighty says, Inna allazina kafaru min ahlil kitab wal mushrikeen. Indeed, those people who committed kufr among the people of the book as well as the polytheists, fi nari jahannam, they will be in the fire of hell, khalidina fiha, they shall abide therein forever. Ulaika hum sharrul bariya, they are the worst form kind of beasts. So the words used for the people who are going to be punished are allazina kafaru, those who had committed kufr. In other words, those who were kafir. So the understanding that you get very clearly from the Quran is that a kafir is bound to be thrown into the hell for him to live there forever. Now, what Muslims have done in most cases is that they've translated the word kafir as non-Muslim. So when you say that the word kafir used in the Quran means a non-Muslim, then the rest of the task is done by the Quran itself. Because the Quran is very clear about the fact that the kafir has no hope of salvation and success in the next life. But the vital question is that is this understanding correct? Is it true that non-Muslims are kafirs? I will now try to help you understand. I will try to plead for the case of the understanding that says that a kafir is not necessarily a non-Muslim. When we read the different passages of the Quran carefully where this word has been used, we find that the word kafir is used for an individual who knows what the truth from God is, who has been informed about the message of the Almighty, the reality of the fact that God has sent His message and His messenger. The person knows it. Deep down, he or she is convinced, and yet is not prepared, is not inclined to accept it arrogantly and unjustifiably. We have a number of passages that help us come to this conclusion. For example, in chapter 29, Surah An-Naml, verses 13 and 14, the Almighty tells us that when Moses came to Pharaoh and his companions with God's message, the message that he brought was absolutely clear. Mubsiratan. It opened the eyes of people who were present. However, wajahadu biha, they rejected it. Wastayqanatha anfusuhum, even though deep inside they were convinced in their hearts that it was true message of God. Why did they reject it? Quran says, zulmam wa uluwa. They rejected the message unjustly, arrogantly. They thought that this message is going to cause their present status quo to be challenged, their power structure to be eliminated, and there would come a new system of governance, a new power structure, and they didn't want to lose what they were enjoying at the time when the message was presented to them. So they were unfair and they were arrogant. They thought they were superior to Moses and Aaron, the two messengers who brought the message. We see in the Quran in 2 verses that mention clearly that when the last prophet, may God's mercy be on him, came, the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, at least their knowledgeable, learned scholars, they knew very clearly that this message was from God and the messenger was God's messenger. in verse 146 of chapter 2 and verse 20 of chapter 6, the Almighty makes the same statement which says, Allazina ataynahumul kitab yarifunahu kama yarifuna abnahum. Those whom we have given the book, they recognize him the way they recognize their own sons. That is, their understanding about the fact that he is God's messenger and the book that he has brought is God's book is so very clear that they have no doubts about it, quite as clearly as they have no doubts about the fact that certain boys are their sons. Then we move on to another important passage relevant to the subject, which is a passage essentially addressing the people of the book as well as Muslims. It is the 44th verse of chapter 5, which says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ. And those who refuse to implement, who refuse to act upon مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ, what God has revealed, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ, they are indeed kafirs. That is, a kafir is a person who knows what God's message is, and yet he is not prepared to follow it. He just simply rejects it. These are the people who are kafirs, no matter whether they are non-Muslims or Muslims. So, a kafir is an expression which includes all those people, no matter what their religion, all those people who know what the truth from God is, but yet they are arrogantly spurning it, rejecting it. I'm not saying that people who are sinning are kafirs. Obviously, if somebody is going against the Almighty's expectations, but is embarrassed whenever he or she does something wrong, they're still believers, weak believers, they're not kafirs. But according to the Quran, if a person very clearly, openly and blatantly refuses to follow what the Almighty has given as his law and says that I know that it's from God, but I'm not going to follow it, such people are kafirs. Then we have two passages in the Quran at least, which very clearly mention names of certain religious groups, people belonging to those groups. And these verses go on to clearly declare the Almighty's decision that all good people belonging to these religious groups shall enter the paradise. It's verse 62 of Surah 2 and verse 69 of chapter Surah 5, wherein in almost the same words, God says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ هَادُوا وَالنَّصَارَى وَالصَّابِئِينَ. Indeed, those people who believed, that is, who are Muslims, and the Jews, and the Nazarenes, the Christians, and Sabians. It was a small religious group at the time when the Quran was being revealed. Man amana billahi wal yawmil akhir. Whoever believed in God and the Day of Judgment, wa amila salihan, and did good deeds, falahum ajruhum inda rabbihim, for them is going to be their reward with their Lord, wala khawfun alayhim wala hum yahzanun. They shall have no fear of the future, nor any sorrows and regrets of the past. In other words, they all shall enter the paradise. Who? The Muslims, the Jews, the Christians, and the Sabians. Obviously, somebody might ask, is it possible that one can enter the paradise by rejecting the Quran and rejecting the Prophet who brought the Quran, may God's mercy be on him? The answer is no, that's not possible. But who exactly has rejected the Quran and who has not even come to learn about it properly is what God is going to decide. God is going to hold people accountable in accordance with their understanding, their circumstances, their capacities. if a person has not as yet even learnt about the fact properly that the Quran is God's word, he has not been convinced. Well, for various reasons. Because it was not presented to him or her properly, or because the behavior of the people who were claiming to be believers of the Quran and the Prophet was so poor, was so unimpressive, that it wasn't possible for an honest individual to accept the claim. We don't know what God's decision is going to be. So God is going to hold people accountable in accordance with their circumstances and their capacities. Furthermore, we see in the Quran that the Almighty has praised some people of the book. In other words, some non-Muslims so lavishly that it's not possible that on the one hand the Almighty is praising them, and on the other He has decided that they're going to be punished on the Day of Judgment and would be destined to the hell forever. For example, the Almighty says in verse 75 of Surah number 3, the chapter 3, "And among the people of the book are those, if you trust whom with a huge amount of wealth, they will return it to you honestly." That's what the Almighty is saying regarding the Jews and the Christians. "And among them are those, if you entrust whom with a single silver coin, they will not return to you unless you get it from them forcibly." So, the Quran is telling us that while the Quran was being revealed, there were both kinds, categories of the people of the book. There were good, trustworthy people who were either Jews or Christians, and there were people who were untrustworthy. Likewise, there is another passage in the same chapter 3, verses 113 to 115. The Almighty is talking about another group of people of the book and says, "They are not all alike." That is, not all Jews, all Christians are alike. Or all Muslims are alike. That's a principle that is universal. Among the people of the book, there is a community that have stood firm on their commitments to God. They recite God's verses during periods of night in a state of prostration. They believe in God and the last day, enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong, evil, and hasten towards good deeds. That's Quranic description of some people of the book who were present at the time when the Quran was being revealed. The Quran goes on to say, those are among the righteous people. Whatever good they do, never shall be deprived. They never shall be deprived of its reward. God knows the God-conscious people. In other words, these good people, good Jews, good Christians are going to be rewarded by God. God is not going to allow their good deeds, their sincerity to go waste. In a nutshell, what it means is that when a prophet of God comes to a certain locality, a certain community, and delivers God's message, the people who are not morally upright, they reject him. And the people who are good, they gradually accept him. But it takes time. It was during this while when the Prophet was delivering the message and the process of people converting to Islam was going on, there were some very good people of the book about whom the Quran says that they are good humans. And as and when they will come to learn about Islam properly, they will convert to Islam. So the Quran does not mention anywhere clearly that all non-Muslims are destined for the hell. And I'll mention it later. The Quran also doesn't mention that all Muslims are necessarily going to enter the paradise.